Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Books by Adrian, and welcome if it's your first time. This is Livestream Sunday, which has become our flagship show on this channel. Every Sunday, 4 p.m., you can count on us being here with something awesome. My apologies for missing last week. My guest had scheduling issues, but we are back, and we're going to talk all about naming characters today with this gentleman right here, Jonathan Reddoch. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. I wasn't able to confirm the pronunciation of your last name before we started. How do you say the last name? I winged it.
Well, I say Reddoch, but
Reddoch?
it's all good. Don't worry about it.
No, man. How you say it is how it's said. That's what's up. All right, man. Welcome to the channel. I know that this is your first time here. I don't know if you've seen the show before, but it's pretty free-form conversational, and we're gonna kind of go through some stuff. I do have like some stuff prepped, but for the most part, we tend to kind of wing it and talk about it. There is a private chat, my friend. If you need to let me know anything that you don't necessarily want the whole world to see, you can just throw it in there and I'll catch it. Otherwise, I will be throwing any and all comments from the chat that I find cool and interesting and worth sharing. I'll pull them up on the screen. If anybody's asking questions, we'll answer questions that way. I'm hoping for a decent turnout because I have a little giveaway thing I want to do. But otherwise, we should be good to go. My friend Jonathan, why don't you tell everybody at home who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Jonathan Reddoch. I'm a indie author, writer, editor, publisher, um, and I was in the editing industry and writing outside of books, for corporations and schools and things for maybe 15 years, and I've been writing amateur stuff for a long time, and then after COVID hit, I lost my job, my with all my what do you call it benefits and everything, and so a friend and I were like, well, let's just start our own independent publisher, and we did, and we've published a couple books now, and we've got more coming, and so our company's called Collective Tales Publishing. Our first book was Collective Darkness. It was the Amazon bestseller for new horror anthologies last year, and we've got another one coming out soon. So, yeah.
That, that's awesome, man. I had no idea that you had started your own publishing company. That's news to me. Very, very cool. You said you've already published a couple of books. Can you tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about what's already out?
So yeah, the first one we have is Collective Darkness. So this is the one I was telling you about. It was an Amazon bestseller,
Yeah,
and
cool, cool.
we got a lot of people that wanted a sequel. So we have another one coming out. But we have a little book called Little Darkness that is out now. That one's small. It's flash fiction and poetry. And then we have a new book called The Darkness Between coming out in September. I think it's going to be really good. It's also flash fiction and poetry. And then we have a fantasy book coming out later this year in November called Collective Fantasy. Next year, we're going to do a sci-fi one called Collective Visions. And then we're going to do a dystopian, apocalyptic, cosmic horror collection called Collective Chaos. And then also, I was recently published in a book called Hope Screams Eternal. So if you check that out, that's from Unsettling Reads, their podcast that made the book.
And that's like a short story collection, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Cool.
it's short stories and poetry. I have 3 poems in there. So
Dude, that's awesome. You put a lot in a very short amount of time. You put a lot out there.
yeah. And then also, I'm part of this romance writing group. My business partner, she's the president of the League of Utah Writers Romance Chapter, and I'm editing a little book that's coming out from the group. It's called, I think it's going to be called Meet Cute. So that comes out this summer, and then there's another book that we're working on that's going to come out next February. That's about second chance at love. So yeah. So I've got a few different things going on.
That's awesome, man. Um, I would feel a little dishonest if I said I'm sorry that you got fired because I know that so many people went through
Oh,
that and so many people went through some hardships because of it. But like yourself, so many people also finally got to do their passions and turn what they want to do in life into what they are doing in life. And in that sense, I'm incredibly happy for you, man. That sounds
Yeah,
awesome.
honestly, it was kind of the best thing that's ever happened.
Yeah,
I mean, they gave me, they laid off a lot of people, so it's not like I took it personal. But they were very clear, like, this is because of COVID. You're great, but honestly, it
yeah, I
was.
hear it.
I mean, they gave me a generous severance, and I have unemployment while I'm looking for a job. But there's no way I would have ever just left a good paying job with good benefits to pursue publishing. It's the risk is so high, and honestly, we don't
Yeah.
even make any money.
But having that violent push sort of where
Yeah,
like all of a
exactly.
sudden it's like, hey man, sink or swim, because guess what? Nobody's hiring right now either. So
No.
it's not like you can go job hunting. Like it's go time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have been looking for a job in my industry since that time, but there's just not any jobs yet. The
Yeah.
COVID destroyed my industry, and it'll be coming back. But in the meantime, the governor decided that I should be a waiter or something. I don't know, so he decided to take away all our unemployment benefits.
That's
But
insane, man. That's insane.
in the meantime, I'm making art that's well received, and I mean, I took a page out of J.K. Rowling's book, right? So
That's awesome, man. See, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I was one of the unlucky ones who didn't get fired for
you bet. Oh my
COVID.
God.
Because like I still, being that we were all going through COVID times and trying to stay home as much as possible, I still was able to finally start working on my book in earnest, last year, and I've been, I finally finished the first draft, and so that's huge. But I would have finished it a lot sooner if I didn't have a job that I had to go to 5 days a week still. Um, and it's funny because I mean, I work in a hotel, and for the most part, I work the overnight shift. So I'm alone, and even when we're busy, I can sometimes go a couple hours without seeing people sometimes because it's the middle of the night. People are sleeping.
Sure, yeah.
So add COVID to that and bring our occupancy way down, and I have nothing but time working there. Like, yeah, I still have to go to work, but I had time to write. So it was this weird, like, in between situation for me. Um, but it led to all of this getting started. So it's pretty
Well,
cool, man.
yeah, actually, and I have a novel that I've been working on for like 15 years, right? And
That the big one,
and and now
the
I'm
big
getting
one.
close to finishing it because yeah, I mean, I sort of finished the first draft, and I'm going through it again, and that's another. I mean, I got some time, so Plus,
Yeah,
my kids, I've been keeping them home, and I'm spending time with them, homeschooling them and stuff. So like,
same.
it's kind of a blessing in disguise, kind of thing.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, it's funny because when it first began, like obviously for everybody it was a pretty huge shock. Like, wait, what? We have to like stay home and we're not going to work and we're not going to all these places and we can't see our families and visit with our friends. Like, we have to stay home. What's this going to be like? And it's crazy because at first it just seems like such a horrible situation, and yet very quickly I started seeing on the internet folks just turning it into opportunity, man, turning it into an opportunity to do something they've always wanted to do. And that was just beautiful. And that goes all the way down to, the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that happened with George Floyd and all that stuff. That's part of that too. It's one of these situations where like suddenly we actually have time to deal with these things that we haven't been able to deal with before because we have a freaking 9 to 5 that we have to clock into. So it's really interesting how the country and the world has changed over the last year. There's all these hiring issues for, fast food places and stuff like that. It's like, of course, nobody's going to go back to work for you for that amount of money
yes,
when we can make 3 times as much at home on the internet making TikToks or whatever. Like,
yeah.
there's no way that you're going to bring these people back like that. It's not going to happen. So we're we're still in the midst of some crazy,
Well,
crazy
yeah, like
change,
okay, yeah,
change,
like
change, change.
like in my state, I live in Utah, and the governor put some money towards educating people the last year so that they could get better jobs and stuff. And then now they're like, why isn't no one working these fast food or going back to waiting? It's like
Yeah.
you realize people want to do something better with their lives. Well, not that there's anything wrong with waiting, but like
No, there's
something
nothing wrong with any.
they
There's
want to
nothing
do.
wrong with any of these jobs, but except for the fact that it's not what people want to do, and now they don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
you know, and they haven't had to do it for a while, but we didn't know that. Like we didn't really know it until we had no choice but to be home and figure stuff out. And so like everybody just sort of figured stuff out, you know what I mean? Something for themselves. Every person, you know, has their own little side hustle now. And that side hustle in the last year and a half grew into their main hustle, and they don't need
Yeah,
McDonald's or
exactly.
whatever. Like they just don't need it anymore. It's crazy. It's crazy. The world's going to keep changing dramatically over the next couple of years, man. The internet has changed everything. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. You know, I haven't published anything yet. I haven't put a book out yet or anything like that. This is my debut novel. Why am I running a YouTube channel and doing interviews with other authors and stuff? Well, number one, because I want to get better, and number two, because I want folks to find me and hopefully become interested in what I'm writing and actually be there waiting for the book when it comes out.
Yep.
You know, what's the point of putting out a book if nobody buys it?
Well,
So,
yeah, to your point, like I see a marketing mistake that authors make a lot is they wait until they write their book in the
and then
shadows. No one knows for them,
start marketing. Yeah,
and then yeah, and that's like too late.
yeah,
And
too
one of
late
the things
already.
that we do with our business is I help my business partner Elizabeth Suggs. You should follow her. She's got great content. But
We'll do.
we have, we rotate through clients that hire us to help with marketing and things like that. And we make custom TikTok videos and we give them advice and consultations and things like that. But we have one client who I won't name them because it might make them sound bad, but like they don't want to they want to be known for their writing. They don't want to be known for them. I'm like, well, you're a brand though, so they're buying you. They're buying your brand. You gotta get out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a similar experience recently where I've hired an artist. I've commissioned them to do some portraits for my characters. One of which you saw in the opening animations. That's one of my main characters, and she did the art for that, and she's amazing. She's Odette A. Bach. She has an Instagram account that she runs her business through, and I'll add the link into the description later for folks on the rewatch. But I wanted to have her on. I wanted to have her on the channel and to talk about the process of doing, portraits for authors because that's mainly what she does. She does character portraits for writers and authors, and I think
Oh, that's
that's
really
awesome.
cool.
And I wanted to talk to her about it, and she doesn't want to come on. She doesn't want to, show her face.
Oh,
She wants to be known for her art and not for who she is. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's wonderful. And you have a cool name that's good for branding and everything. But these days, like and not to disparage her or anybody else who doesn't want to show their face on the internet. That's totally cool. That's your prerogative. Do run your thing the way you want to run it, in the way that's right for you. Don't listen to me. I'm a freaking idiot. I just feel like these days, most people want to see the person that they are supporting. They want to know who it is that they're supporting. Especially weirdly, ever since cancel culture and Me Too started happening, like it's this thing where folks care about who you are
yeah.
and what kind of person you are, and they don't want to support you if they don't feel that you're an upstanding person,
Yep.
or deserving of their patronage, and that's also
Yeah.
totally cool and their prerogative. So it's this thing where you have to kind of navigate like how much of yourself you show, how much you don't. When I started this thing, I had and I still have my own personal Instagram where I have friends and family and stuff like that, and I considered just turning that into my author platform Instagram. But instead I opened up a separate one because I'm like, you know what? I'll share my family photos and stuff when I want to, but I don't want, to just have everything out on Front Street. Um, that
Oh
being
no.
said,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a
yeah, and here I am talking to folks, being as upfront about everything as possible. Like that's just, I feel like if you come from an honest place and you build your audience over time, like you're destined for success of some kind. Like just work hard at it.
Yeah. Like I work with a lot of new authors, and I always tell them you should keep your regular Instagram, probably make it private, and then you should start an author one because
Yeah,
one of the things too is like I have my own personal, and I also have my author one, and I don't think that the bookstagrammers that I interact with on a daily basis really care all that much about my kids and the new shoes I bought them.
yeah.
I mean, probably no one really does, but I
I
assume that my
I
friends and
mean,
family care at least a little bit, and I don't
I
care if
feel
they
the
don't
same way about mine. I feel the same way. I always wonder, like, do they even care? Do they want to see? Like every once in a while, like something will come up, Mother's Day, or something like that. And you want to honor your wife, and but at the
Sure.
same time, you're like, but do they care? Like, do the people who read stuff I write actually care? And you just kind of have to, again, come from a place of honesty with it, man. If it's something you want to share, share it, and if not, don't, and try not to
Yeah.
get bogged down too much in it.
Like I
Try
would
to
put some.
keep it natural.
Yeah, like I do think there should be a balance. Like I do put some personal stuff every once in a while in my Bookstagram account,
Yeah, same.
but
Me too.
it's like I don't want to overwhelm people with that stuff. I don't think they want to see too much. A little bit, I think, then they get a taste of your personality. I think finding that right mix, I think, is good.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting, like navigating all this stuff. My buddy who was on the most recent episode that aired, Adrian Guadalupe, he scored the flash fiction story that won my contest. He did the musical score for it. He's I've known him my entire life since second grade. We're best friends. Our children play together. Like he's my brother from another mother, right? And he is. Been going through this kind of transformation lately with getting into computer programming and web design and all that kind of stuff. But the way that he and his brothers approach any project or any kind of interest is unlike anyone else that I've ever seen or known. And they dive in like in the deep end right away, and they try to figure everything out. And one of the things that's going on with him, with his computer programming and with his web design and all that stuff, is he's starting to like see the coding in the matrix, right? And he's been talking to me about like the eras of the internet and how websites used to look and the different looks that they've gone through and what they look like now. And why is it that what we considered to be an attractive website 10 years ago is not the case anymore? It apparently all has to do with drawing your eye to clicking on certain things, right? Like just guiding you to click that button and to keep clicking on their website and not go anywhere, not leave the website, stay on it and keep clicking. And so he's getting into that, like the psychology of the internet. You know what I'm saying? Now
Yeah.
he's an artist. He's a musician. His brothers are artists. Like he's all about supporting artists. So he wanted to kind of put these two things together. And we're talking about an era again where you can try some stuff now. Excuse me. And so he's sort of like starting his own little business here where he's helping artists with their careers and their project, and creating time for them by doing things for them, like running your website, like running your marketing campaigns for your stuff like that. And he's come into partnership with me, and we're working on something right now. I don't want to announce exactly everything that we're doing. We're getting into some stuff, but there's going to be a new website. There's going to be a whole new kind of approach to my platform in general. The YouTube channel will be the same. It'll continue. I'll still be doing all this stuff, but there's going to be a more sort of aggressive campaign over the next year, to not only draw in readers and subscribers and stuff like that, but also to raise money, because the professional edit is going to cost me, man. Like my first draft is 100K, and it's short. It's like really, really like it's really short. Like I need to beef it up, and so I'm looking at probably 150K, if not more. And for when editors charge by the word, that's going to add up, man. So it's going to get real aggressive over the next year. But I say all that to encourage everybody to, like, if you haven't already, just start, like, going for it. Whatever it is that you're going for, go for it. I mean, this way. Look at this gentleman who has published as much as he has in the last year and a half, like tops, right? Remarkable, my friend. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, I didn't even mention all of the things. There's a couple of.
Oh, dude, now you're just flexing. Are you kidding? There's more? No, that's awesome. And give me the website. I'll throw it up on the screen for everybody. What's the website?
Well, I have a website. It's probably the best place to go, which is it's our company. So it's ctp fiction.com.
Fiction.
Yeah, that's
ctpfiction.com.
That's the publishing company I co-own. And we have a blog that we started recently on there. And,
is that right?
Hmm. And I included in a recent post the beginning of a short story that's published. It's free. It's available on Medium. But if you go to, it's called the Family Unit, and then it links from there to Medium, where it was published in the literary journal called the Salt Flats, and so that you can read for free. So
That's
it.
awesome. Free is for me. That's my motto.
Yeah, it's real short too. It's like under 2,000 words. So
Nice. Well, my friend, today we are getting into the topic of naming characters. I wanted to say hey to Just Ava, who showed up in the chat. Hey, what's up? There's not too much going on in the chat yet, but folks tend to start showing up after a little while. Sunday's a real like busy day on AuthorTube. You know, Barrett Laurie usually has stuff going on. Ken Sean usually has stuff going on. Lots of sprints and stuff going on. So folks tend to show up after a little while. Um, Naming characters, man. This is something that I feel every author tackles differently, and more so than that, some authors tackle it differently for a character by character basis, myself included. So I compiled today. Well, I didn't compile. I found a source, a website that has not 19 methods and tips for naming characters. It's a bit much,
wow. Okay.
but there's a list of a couple different of 9 different ways that folks name characters, and that's really where I wanted to start and get into. First off and foremost, you know, you've written a couple of things. You've got at least a novel that you've been working on for 15 years now, which I'm incredibly curious about. We're gonna get back to that in a little bit. But for yourself and naming the characters in these books that you write and the worlds that you create, how do you usually go about it? How important are the names to you? That's another thing that's different from author to author. What are your feelings on naming characters in general?
Well, okay, I do think names are real important, and I mean, I think a big part of it is your genre, right? So your author names, I mean, your character names are going to reflect the world they live in, right? So fantasy names are going to be different than sci-fi names and fiction names and so forth. But I think that a lot of authors don't give names that much importance or prominence in their story. And I mean, that's fine if that's the way you do it. But to me, my whole thing is every name, of, at least of every main character, should say something about it. And I think if you're writing a genre, let's just stick with genre for a second. Like if you're writing genre, like sci-fi or fantasy or whatever, then I think you should give your character a unique name. So when they hear that name, they think of your book and that character. So if it's a generic name that could be tied to other books, I think that's a little problematic to me, in my opinion.
Every time I see a main character named John or Jack, I roll my eyes every time because I'm like, come on, man, like,
Yes,
like that's
exactly
the
what I
best you
mean.
got.
Or David or Jason, even these like boring names. I mean, Jason now in my mind is the serial killer, so no one should be using it, right? But I mean,
I mean, and it again, it all comes down to how people name their characters. You know, I'm not saying I would never use the name Jason, for example, if
yeah,
it's appropriate for the character. But the point being that, you know, especially for your main character, especially for like the hero of your story, you know, any John or Jack is just gonna fade into the millions of Johns and Jacks that we know. You know, Michaels and you know, like there's so many of them. You know,
at the
it's
very
like.
least, it should have a good, memorable last name. Like the character Jack Reacher. I don't read those books. I saw one of the movies, but like Jack Reacher together is a very memorable name. You know.
Yeah, agreed.
Even if he was just called Jack, I don't think anyone would remember him. Jack, you know, Jack and the Beanstalk.
Just Ava mentions that Harry went over all right, and it's pretty common in the UK, and that's true. But how common is Potter? And not that necessarily that it's not common, but those two words together, like Jonathan was saying, Harry
Yeah.
Potter together, like that, just it's
Nobody ever
chocolatey, it's
calls someone
round on
Harry,
the ends. It
right?
sounds good. It feels good to say it. Like it's not so. It's not just about like using a unique name necessarily, but like you were saying, if you make it
Yeah.
like a sound, you know what I'm saying? Like people, you say Harry Potter, and everybody knows what that is and what that means and
Yeah.
what that makes people feel, you know,
I would say
because he
that
already exists.
character.
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. I feel like there's something to it though in the naming of the character. You know,
That
and the
character,
person choosing that name, they chose it for a reason, you know?
there's no character in that book named Harry. His name is Harry Potter. That's why they call him Harry Potter so often in the book. If you look in the book, he's like Harry Potter this and Harry Potter that.
They do
Like,
always say like his full name, don't they? That's kind of
yeah, they
interesting.
say it
That's a
a
good
lot.
point. Yeah. I mean, they do
Whenever
call
there's
him
because he's
like his
famous for
closest
that.
friends call him Harry,
Sure,
but
yeah,
you're
like
right. Like
Ron.
anytime a
They call him
teacher, yeah, they refer to him as Harry Potter. That's very
that. Like,
interesting. That's a
oh, it's
good
Harry
point.
Potter. Oh, Harry Potter. And nobody refers to the books as like, oh, you like Harry? Oh, like, who's Harry? Harry and Henderson? Who are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, Harry
Yeah.
Potter. His name isn't Harry. It's Harry Potter. And I think you have to remember that part of it.
Just Dave is like grilling us right now that there's probably 114 other Harrys at the school.
There's other Harry. Then I don't think they mention any,
It
but
was
there,
feisty today. She came for blood. Um, you
yeah,
know what's interesting to me is usually the meanings behind the names and how they may or may not relate to the character. I always try with any main character, even honestly, even side characters. I always try to find a name with some sort of meaning, not necessarily to like define them as a character or give away their story arc or anything like that. But
yeah,
if it's a theme of their story or a feeling that their character is supposed to convey or something like that. Naming my kids was this huge deal in my life. And for my second, Felix, he was due, and the day that he was due, my wife hadn't gone into labor yet, but the day that he was due, we still didn't have a name for him. We were really really struggling with finding a name for him. So on that day, she texted me. I was at work, and she texted me, and she's like, "Hey, like, he's due today, and we still don't have a name. Like, what are we gonna do?" And I go, "Okay, what do you know for a fact about this baby?" And she tells me, "Well, I know that he's a very happy baby. Like, especially compared to my first pregnancy, I feel him inside me. He is happy. He is calm. He is relaxed. He's just a really happy baby." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And I looked for names that meant happy, and it came down to between Felix and Timothy. And I was like, you know what? There's no beating Felix. That's the perfect name. It means happiness. It means happy. That's my baby. And sure enough, that baby was born smiling, and to this day is the happiest little thing in the world. And he brings so much joy to everybody. You just look at his smile and you light up, and it's the right name for him for who he is. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel about naming characters in books. But like you mentioned earlier, sometimes the name doesn't mean anything. Sometimes the name is just a name. Neil Gaiman very famously named his protagonist of American Gods Shadow. One name, one word, Shadow. And whenever anybody asks him why he named him Shadow, he's like, sometimes a name is just a name. That's just his name. That's just what his name is. And that's a cool answer. I'm not saying I don't believe him, but I don't believe him because that because that character in that story, I don't know if you've ever read it or watched the show,
mm,
but the whole point of that character is he's living in a world where the ancient gods and the new gods are going to war with each other, and he's caught in the middle. He's the human element in the story, and as such, he is a stand-in for all of humanity, and as such, he should be mostly a blank slate for
a shadow.
everyone else to fill with their own, ideas and feelings about what's going on with all these gods. So maybe the name Shadow is perfect because what is Shadow if not the outline of a person with nothing inside it, right? Like just emptiness and blankness. That's what a shadow is in the shape of a person for you to fill in with whatever image of that person it is. So yeah, sometimes a name is just a name, and sometimes it's still the most perfect name for this particular character. And I have a hard time believing he didn't do that on purpose because this is Neil Gaiman we're talking about here. So let's go through really quickly um, a couple of these um, naming strategies, and then we'll go through them and talk about them
Sure.
little by little. I'm going to share my screen here. Hey, sit tight. All right, here we go. So this website, I'm going to put the address scrolling across the bottom. It is self-publishingschool.com, and then this particular page is /character-names. and it pulls this up. If you scroll right down here, this quick list right here shows us 9 different ways that you can name characters for your book. All right, there's the using baby name websites method, there's the root meaning method, and we'll get into what all these methods are and what they mean. There's the mashup character naming method, which, as you can imagine, is taking this part of this name and this part of this name and putting them together to create a new name. The add-on method, which is like taking a normal name and adding a suffix onto it to create, usually fantasy writers will do that. Develop first naming method. I believe this is where you develop the entire character first and then decide later on what the name is based on who that character is. Making character names up from scratch. That's pretty self-explanatory. Name by era. Especially if you're doing historical fiction, you want to choose names that are appropriate for the era in which your story is set. Using similar to real life names. This is kind of redundant, I feel, when we get into it. It's kind of retreading areas that the other 7 have already covered. And then there's 11 tips. On the last one is 11 tips for getting character names right. And we might not get to that. But overall, we have 7 different naming methods here. You yourself, for your characters, have you used any of these? Baby name websites, root name meaning, mashup character add-on, develop first, making character names up from scratch.
I think I've probably tried all of them at some point.
Same.
So it depends on okay. So like, to me, I like having, for my main protagonist of a book, it's something that's like, I like to think of something that's not going to be that recognizable, your Harry Potter, if you will. So that one to me is important. And so, like, for the novel I'm working on, the character's name is Thaddeus Rufus Maniacus Acrianus.
Okay, what?
Right. This novel is a sci-fi story. It's about an alien who, he comes from a world where they don't have names, and his world is destroyed, but some humans save him, and then he's sold to the zoo. Eventually, he emancipates himself using the legal system, and then he gives himself his own name. And so, when I came up with this name, I mean, originally he was just Acrianus, which is a change of a. There's an old slave who freed himself. He wrote his own book. It's called I forget, but it's basically his story in England about how he was in Africa and was sold into slavery from other Africans, and then he was sold to white people, and then eventually he got his freedom. Anyway, so there's kind of a parallel story there. And then I made up fake reasons for where the rest of the names came from, because I wrote the name first, and then I went backwards, and then I made little footnotes in the book about where the character came up with the name from. So there's like, Thaddeus Rufus Maniacus Acrianus. These all come from. There's also different reasons for why he has this name.
Okay.
That's a long story. But like, so in that alone, I've used several methods. So there's like being named after someone famous. I think, I don't know if that one was on the list, but I think that one, it's sort of a meaning kind of thing. Kind of like how my mother named me after my uncle. Even though there's a name meaning from the Bible for Jonathan that God has given, that's not why she did it. She picked, a name that was of someone she cared about. So that method's kind of being used there. Mm-hmm. And then Maniacus is just, it sounds like it's Latin. It's not really.
That's, with my first Charlie, we named him a family name, but also a geek name. So we named him Charles because the weekend that we got married, my wife and I got married, was the same week that my father's brother died. His name was Carlos, and not that my dad has favorite brothers, but they were probably the closest. And my dad unfortunately had to choose between going to his brother's funeral or going to his son's wedding, and he chose to come to my wedding, and that's something that weighed very heavily on me, and I didn't take lightly. So when it came time to naming our first son, we thought that we would honor our Uncle Carlos, and give my dad back his own little Carlos, and so we named him Charles, and we call him Charlie. But it was kind of a trick because my wife and I are also huge fans of Lost, and one of our favorite characters was, at least for his redemption story arc, was Charlie. And so that's another reason that we named him Charlie, was in honor of the idea that you can always do better, you can always right your ship. So that's kind of where that name was coming from. One second, thank you. Look at that service. I love it. Delicious. Um, so yeah, so sometimes you do it, naming a character or a loved one after another loved one, someone you know. I try not to name my characters after people I know. I try to sometimes form characters out of people I know, but I always have to name them something unique. I never want to, just copy over a buddy or something like that. I feel a little weird about that. Although I have actually done it now that I think of it. I was working on a graphic novel a few years back. We never finished it, and it's something that we're going to come back to. But one of the sort of gimmicks of that particular project was that we were telling stories that had to do with reality and dream worlds, and how one influences the other, and the back and forth between the two. And we had some hero characters that had the power of going from one world to the other, like not just fall asleep and go to in dream, but literally go to the dream world. And so one of the things that we were doing with that project was with her permission, a friend of mine, I named a character after her. I designed the character to look like her and to have a similar job to what she has in real life. The idea being that there's two versions of the same person, of the same character, a fictional version in this fictional world I've created, and a real world version. And I was really looking forward to being at a comic convention or something, and have my friend with us when somebody comes up for a signing and they see the character that they see on the page, and have their mind blown or whatever. But like I said, we never finished that one. But that's another one, like the idea of like crafting characters after people that you know and care about, or know well, because that's another part of it, is like getting all the layers of the character in there. You know what I mean? All the different facets of what makes them a unique person. So let's go through these one by one then, because for me, I tend to go more for the root meaning. Here, let me share my screen again. The root meaning is always really important to me. They give a couple examples here. Tobias in The Savior's Champion, his name means goodness, and he's the hero of the story. Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Rings comes from an old English word, fraud, which translates to wise by experience, which is really interesting when you think about where that character ends up after all his experiences and how
Yeah,
he has changed. Um, this one's funny. Katniss Everdeen in Hunger Games. Um, Katniss is a plant, which the name of which roughly translates from Latin as archer. So like that writer in particular, like
that's
kind of took,
good.
yeah, they I didn't even know that, but Katniss means archer. And so things like that are really interesting to me. My three main characters have first, middle, and last names, and each name has a meaning. And my idea behind it is not just to have a name that means something, but when you put it together with their full name means something. Like maybe even a phrase that sums their
But
story up, or who they are. That's how I go about it.
what I like about those examples that you gave, especially the Katniss one, is that I didn't know that. So the names work, and then they work even more as you like look up the name and learn about it.
Yeah.
I think there's a temptation sometimes, and I'm looking at Star Wars here, where you make it obvious, a little too obvious, even, and then I don't like it. It's not as
Yeah.
clever, I don't think.
Yeah. Like there's oh man, I had one in my head already. It was, and it just flew out of my brain. This you know, like if you have a character who's a bounty hunter and you name him Chase, you know what I mean? Like that's just like, come on, man.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like stuff like that where it's obviously it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. It means the same thing, but come on, like try a little
Well,
harder.
okay. Compare a couple. Okay, let's compare some of the villains. Okay, in Star Wars, like Darth Vader, I think is a brilliant name because it's supposed to come from Dark Father, right? And then
Mm,
like old German is like Vater, and like okay, so like okay, that's clever. But like then Darth Maul, which I'm okay with, is a little on the nose because you're like, oh Maul, he's gonna maul you up, right? And then it gets even worse because his brother is Sauvage Opress or whatever, and I'm like, it's spelled Savage Opress, like he's an Irish gangster or something. And I'm like, and then it gets even worse from that. And then on the very end, you have you know this character Sleaze Bagano, Sleaze Bagano.
oh my
He's
God.
yes, some of the prequel names
Please,
are
but
so bad. But if you go back, and I think it's because he went through a process. Like with Luke, Luke's original name was Starkiller, which they ended up
hmm
reusing later. I think he was going to be more of a bad guy back then, but Luke Starkiller sounds really bad. Like, oh,
yeah.
Starkiller. Like, would a 5-year-old write that name? But then Skywalker, I think, turned out really good. That's a good name.
Yeah. Skywalker really puts like this sort of like hopeful image in your mind of somebody like traveling through space. Like
Yes,
it's
and it's like
you know
it's
going
like
on a
quest.
journey.
Yeah,
Skywalker. You know, like I
and
hear you.
it's not
Oh, oh,
that literal because he's not walking
exactly,
on the sky.
exactly. It creates a feeling more than anything.
Yeah.
You know, the word Skywalker creates a
Just like Han
feeling.
Solo. Yeah, Han Solo is
Yes.
also a good name. And
Yeah.
then they kind of ruined it with this prequel. They're like, "Oh,
Oh
you
my
don't have
God.
anyone
Don't.
else? Well, you're going to
I
be
hate
called
that
Solo."
movie. I hate that movie, dude.
Like,
I I hate
what I
that it
don't. Yeah.
exists. I hate that anyone thought it was a good idea. I hate that movie, man. What
What
a
I really don't
horrible
like about it
fucking movie.
is everything about Han Solo was just created in one wild weekend. Like his gun, his name, his everything. It was just like boom, 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 and it's like,
Dude, nothing in that movie infuriates me more than the scene where they explain how he got his gun. It's a gun. He got it. Like, oh, some guy gave it to him. Really? That's what I thought happened. Some guy gave it to him. Like, it's so
oh,
dumb.
yeah.
It's infuriating. I hate that movie. I wanted to check it with Ava for a minute because she's been throwing some gold into the chat here, and
Oh
we've
yeah.
been missing it. So she wanted to throw some names at us here. She said that with her firstborn, we didn't know the gender, so we picked names for both. But I didn't love the feminine one so much as the masculine. My daughter is Autumn. Thank goodness, love it now. Jonathan, nice to meet you. By the way, she says she's not actually feisty, just loves seeing all the angles and keeping the chat lively.
Feisty. That's right,
Um,
feisty.
says that she recently found a name for a character who was nameless for far too long. She asked for suggestions and combined Abigail and Briar into Begail. She's
Ooh,
one
I
of her
love that.
favorites. That's a really, I like it. I
That
like
would
it
be
a
a great
lot.
fantasy character.
That's a great example of something that just kind of rolls off the tongue. It sounds good. Like there's something to that. Like there really is something to like the sound of it, like being complimentary almost to your ears. You know,
Regale
like you.
sounds like she could be like a friend of Katniss. You know.
I was gonna say pirate. I was gonna say like sounds kind of piratey. You know,
Oh sure. Like
Captain
yeah, I can see
Brigale.
that too.
You know, something like that. Yeah, yeah, I dig it. I dig it. Da, 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 da. She was named for her grandmother. My middle name and the one I go by outside of online networks was just made up by my mother, pronounced like Diane. You know, my sister, uh, when my sister was born, or was about to be born, my folks had trouble coming up with a name for her, and they wanted to somehow combine their names together, make something out of their names together for her name. I was 4 years old, and I took my dad's nickname and my mom's name, and I fused them together, and I was like, why don't you just name her this, Janita? And it works. It's perfect. Like it doesn't mean anything. It's a made up word, made up of made up sounds that a 4 year old like made with his face. But it's a beautiful name and it works for my sister for who she is and it's perfect. And they I as a 4 year old I nailed it. I was naming characters back then. I never let my sister forget that I named her. Um,
I don't know if
her
this is one of the methods, but one of the things that we've sort of even touched on is like taking a word that's not a name generally and just giving that to a character as a name.
right. So like a word
Like
that's not a
shadow.
name. Okay. Yeah. Like shadow. Yeah. Good one. Yeah.
Or like, okay, so um, my kid is Hazel, but my other kid, when who's younger, when she says her name, it sounds like Hazard sometimes, and she's kind of a little bit of a hazard. So like my mom will call her Hazard now sometimes. And I'm like, that
I
would be a
like
good
it.
name for a character. Like, oh, there goes Hazard. Like, oh, hey, I'm Hazard.
But with a name like Hazard, the character can't be like, a loose cannon, like source of chaos, because then that's so obvious. You name them something like Hazard, they better be like something kind of, meek and unassuming, and so then when they let it out, it's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, she brings up a good note here. Superheroes are often direct in names and also science fiction, perhaps, is a trend of the genre. Alliteration is definitely a trend of superhero genre. Peter
Yeah,
Parker,
yeah,
Clark Kent,
yeah.
um,
That's
these
Stan Lee's
these
path of naming
yeah,
characters, but they've
Bruce
kind of moved
Banner,
away from that, and they're a little
Reed
more serious
Richards.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, they're starting to move away from it now. With their newer characters, but you still got Miles Morales. Like he's still
Oh,
pretty
for sure.
new. It's still happening a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's
I think it's fine.
Peter
That's
Parker
because
is a great name.
comic books are fun and silly, and I think that works within that genre of writing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The alliteration is it fits there. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? If I was to see it all over the place, it would that might be different. Jessica Jones, she brings up, yeah, yeah.
yeah, just yeah. There's dozens. I mean, I do actually like that. It's kind of fun, and I love comic books.
She brings up when people's last names or surnames were their occupation, and yeah, Smith was usually a blacksmith. You know, so it's
Cooper, all those old British names.
yeah, yeah. They just kind of get passed down. Um,
So
yeah, that's
that's a
another
very
one.
Anglican thing to do, and I know other European cultures do it too. My last name Reddoch is Scottish, and it doesn't come from an occupation. It comes from it was like the name of a hill or something, and so like there was a group of people in a clan or whatever that all shared this area, and so they kind of got that name.
Hmm,
And that's kind of where
right
they
on.
got. Yeah, that's like the Scottish way of doing things, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of names after places where you're from, that kind of thing.
Or like
Um,
the Irish thing that they used to do is they would if you were part of a clan, then you would be Mick or Mac, whatever. Some that stands for like with these people.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
and then I know like a lot of in the southern Europe, I guess they would do your city or your town. So like Da Vinci, he comes from Vinci. It's like an area. So it's
yeah,
like
from Vinci,
Leonardo.
yeah,
Oh, he's Leonardo of Vinci, whereas that's Leonardo of some other place.
yeah. And then you have, like Norse last names that are usually like who your
Oh,
father was, Thor, Odin's son
yep.
of Odin, you know. The legacy of names is something really interesting too, In my book, I'm creating a whole, world and full of history and everything, and Uh, one of my main characters, their name goes back a good, 300 years to a very significant historical event. So all the way down to that, if it's appropriate for the story, like go for it. If you can find a name that you're going to use through the ages and give significance and build up over time. We have someone new in the chat. Aphrodite Lee, how's it going? Welcome. Welcome. We're talking about naming
Nice.
characters. Throw your ideas into the chat. I want to actually I'm going to wait for a few more people to show up before I talk about the content. So never mind. All right. So
One thing I do want to complain about is in
Dr. Who.
fantasy they use a lot of names that I can't remember or how to pronounce, and it is frustrating. It makes me not want to read those books. And I think
Yeah.
that's maybe that's just my problem. I don't know how common it is, but I don't like that. You know what I mean? Okay, like one of my favorite Disney movies, the one that gets like zero love, is The Black Cauldron. Have you ever seen it? It's based on a fantasy book. It's Welsh, and
I saw it a very long time ago. It has been a long, but
yeah,
yes, I've seen it.
and you don't see this princess with the other princesses usually, but Princess Eilonwy, right? It took me so long to finally get that name down, and only because I love the movie so much with my kids.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, and that's not even. There's names that are way harder in like fantasy books and other places. Like Game of Thrones has, I think, some that I've. Well, they have so many characters I just forget. But you know, some
They
of the
have
names
so
are
many.
really
They have so many characters that some of them are hard to say, but a lot of those names I'm actually really
are really
impressed
good.
by. You know, yeah, they're really really good. The
Cersei.
Cersei is one, you know, and that's not something necessarily he made up, but the way that he changes the
Yep.
spelling and makes it, you know, like sound it almost sounds a little sinister, you
One
know,
that
and
always makes me kind of laugh is Jamie. English Jamie.
Jamie,
Yeah, like
yeah.
his name always feels out of place to me in that
The
world.
only reason it kind of works for me is because you also have Jon Snow, and you also have, you know, like you also have Bran, which is just Brandon, and that's a very normal
Oh,
name.
really? Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard Bran outside before, but it
Yeah.
makes sense.
No,
Brandon.
I've never heard Bran outside of Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
but Bran is short for Brandon, and so there's just this sort of like normalcy to those names that kind of like make Jamie okay. But you're right, it did always stick out to me, especially reading. You know, it's
Yeah.
just like, and it's spelled like so normally. You're just like, it's like,
I
where
think
am I?
I think for me, I have a hard time keeping track of all the names because there's so many characters. But
But yeah, there's a bunch of characters. I love those books, man. They're so good. Um, I wanted to share a little resource that I use for naming my characters. Let me share this screen real quick here. We'll stop that one. We'll share this one. It is a website called BehindTheName.com. And the reason that I use this one over any others is because not only can you search by name, which is how most of these websites work, but you can also search by meaning. There's a little settings wheel over here, and you can instead choose to search by meaning. And so you type in whatever meaning it is that you're looking for. Let's say, I don't know, give me something.
let's say large.
All right. So large, so big, large, imposing, whatever. Meaning large, it'll look up all these names. It has 11 results, so, and it tells you where they're from: Indonesian, Irish, Korean, you know, Scottish, English, Welsh, Chinese. All these names are here.
What's
You
the Welsh
can
one?
the Welsh one. Okay. Gwynfor is the Welsh
No,
one.
there you go. That's a good name for
That's a really
a
good
knight.
one. Derived from the Welsh element gwyn, meaning white, fair, blessed, combined with mar, meaning great and large. So you also get this other piece to it with fair and blessed. But if you click on the name,
Right?
it's going to go ahead and take you down. It'll let you know if it's typically a masculine name or not. It tells you the categories that it falls into. It's a really useful resource when it comes to
Oh,
names.
that is really cool.
A lot of writers will use like baby naming websites, and I feel like it's a little too like those names are geared.
Uh-oh. Did we lose our host? Looks like it's coming back.
I that happened last time, and I don't know why that's happening. My
Oh,
apologies.
okay. I was
It
like, oh
knocked
no, what do
me.
I do?
No, it knocks me off, and then I just have to come right back in. It doesn't take very long, but it's just annoying, and
Oh, okay, good.
it never happened before last show rather, and it happened last show, and it happened this one. So I'm gonna have to look into that and see what's going on there. Um, but yeah, so like another cool thing about this is so like let's say you you can find names here to combine together. You know, like you can change the spelling of these and mess with them that way. I have a couple of characters in my book where I found a really cool name, but the spelling was so normal that I actually just changed the spelling a little bit to make it a little more sci-fi, a little weirder, and make it stand out a little more. Um,
The rule is if you want to make it fantasy, just add in like a WY somewhere,
Yeah, yeah, but just, or something. Don't just
Yeah.
don't
That
just
makes
do
it
that
look
over and
wild.
over.
What it does.
That's
um,
funny. All right,
yeah,
so
I
let me
think you were saying
close.
something about the baby names being too common or something when you got cut
Oh
off.
no, yeah, that the websites for baby names tend to organize them based on names and not necessarily based on meanings. And so that's why I
Oh,
point
sure.
people to this one because sometimes you know what name you want to use and you want to know what it means, but other times you were looking for a name that means something in particular. And so that's why I'm pointing people to this website. It's a very useful resource for me. for naming characters. I mean, I found my children's names on here, so like it's pretty good. And not just by meaning. You can search by origin, by length, by sound and syllables. You can search by relations, by popularity, by a famous namesake. If you want to name your, a character after a famous, a character in history or something like that, you might have a famous namesake. So it's just very versatile for finding names. So behindthename.com is
I like
my
that.
big recommendation for everybody. Check that out. You can look by name origin if you're looking for a particular region of the world that you want to find names from, stuff like that. It's really useful. Um, let's check back in on the chat real quick because I know Aphrodite was geeking out about Black Cauldron when you were talking about
Yes,
it.
it's the movie that almost bankrupted the studio, but I still think it's a good movie. I don't know why it was never popular. They should,
You're very welcome, Aphrodite.
they should bring it back and support it.
All right, so she's giving me requests. Look up Lark or Raven. All right, why not? Let's do a little interactive name stuff here. So I'm going to go over to names meaning lark, and that's going to pull up 4 names. Alondra, derived from Spanish alondra, meaning lark. That's a Spanish Latin American origin. There's a Danish one with I don't actually know what that character is called. The A and the E together. What's it called again? I know it sounds like an A.
It's a type of ligature. I know that.
So it means lark in Danish. The word lark itself, and Toygar. There's a funny fantasy sounding name. Toygar is Turkish, means lark in Turkish.
It's like a villain a little bit. Toygar.
Yeah, Toygar.
Someone you don't want to mess with.
Yeah. If you look up the meaning raven as requested, we're looking at Bertram in English.
Ooh, I like
Bran.
that.
Interesting. Look, Bran also means raven. There you go. And Bran
I'm
is
sure that wasn't a coincidence.
not at all. Yeah, he's closely tied with the ravens in his story. So there you go. Corbin is English. Corbin Dallas from the
Yes,
fifth
Corbin Dallas
the fifth
multipath.
element. Multipath. Enguerrand is medieval French. Medieval French from the former Germanic name, which was composed of the elements Angel, the name of a Germanic tribe, known in English as the Angles, and Hram, raven. This was the name of several French nobles. That's interesting, man. Like, and that's funny because the Angles in our history is what George Martin based the Andals in his book's history. So that ties even further there. So yeah, for Raven, there's 20 results on this page. Aphrodite, if you want to take a look. Yeah, this website is awesome. I will keep the phonetic sound and change the spelling so that I can keep the meanings. Yeah, there you go. I do that all the time. So all that to say that there's
to pronounce. That's my
that's another one. Is you have to consider how hard the name is to pronounce for a reader. Another thing that I saw mentioned on this website over here. Let me go back to sharing it. Another thing that I saw on it was the idea of changing up the lengths of each main character's names so that if you have a main character with a very short name, your next main character should have a longer name. So that way, as they're showing up so frequently in the text, your eye becomes accustomed to seeing, okay, so that's this character, and then that's this character, and that way you almost don't even have to read the name. Just by seeing the length of the word, the name, and it makes reading a little faster, a little smoother. It stops people from like crashing into it. Their names in the Game of Thrones books, A Song of Ice and Fire, where I'll clash with them. Zarozandaxos. Zarozandaxos is a ridiculous name that is incredibly hard to say and incredibly hard to read. And every time his name would show up in the text, I would have to stop and like sound it out. It was incredibly annoying. And so that plays into it too. You know what I mean? Making sure that it sounds good, reading it aloud to yourself as
Yeah,
you're reading
this
over
is
your text.
exactly why I like the audiobook version of Game of Thrones.
I actually can't get into the audiobooks. Number one, because I read the books first. Number two, because the show was such a huge part of my life for so long until it crashed and burned. But when switching over to the audiobook, the reader, especially the ones that I heard, was an older gentleman who has a very good voice for fantasy in general. But there's so many female characters, point of view female characters, young characters, children in these books, that for an older kind of, very well worn voice to then try to sound youthful or try to sound soft and feminine is
Yeah,
and again, like, no
that is a
slight to the
problem. Yeah.
it's no slight to the man, but it would take me out of the story. Every Sansa chapter was a nightmare with that dude's voice. It's just like, oh, this is
I was
weird.
recently listening to this audiobook. It was a pretty good new fantasy book, and there's two narrators. What because the chapters mostly a lot of them focused on the female character, and then did we lose them again? I'll just keep telling my story until he gets back. And the other one was
I was just doing something.
oh, are you still there? Okay. So yeah, and then there was a male narrator for the male chapters, but I did not like that male narrator, so I had to give up because for me, if you don't get the narrators just right, the whole book is kind of, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The names are so important. It really is. The way that they sound, the way that they read, all of that like plays into your experience in reading the book, your enjoyment of the book. It's something you really have to consider. And also, if your main character's name is incredibly long and shows up over and over and over again through the text, it can get a little daunting, man. It can get and lengthen your book. It's another thing you have to consider. So, like, one of my main characters has a four-letter name. Another one of my main characters has like a three-letter name, and then I have a main character with a longer name, Migdalia, lots of letters in there, but most people just call her Migs, and that shortens it down too. So, like, there's nicknames is a whole other thing. Finding the right nicknames for these characters that will keep things moving, smoothly. That's really interesting too.
So one thing I wanted to talk about. You've seen Avatar, the Last Airbender? The
Yeah.
names in that show are perfect. I love them so much. And I looked it up in preparation for
So
the show.
unique and yet like easy to say. You recognize them right away on sight. Each one sounds very different. Sokka,
Yep.
Toph, Katara. There's Aang.
Well, yeah. What was making me remember was you were talking about how having the variation of syllables. So this Aang is one, Sokka two, Katara, three, and then of course Toph, is one again. But like she's not in the first season. But but like you get the variation of names. Plus, I looked it up before the show that they actually have meanings that are like fit the character. I think Aang's is like peaceful air or something like that in Chinese, and Katara's is like wanting hope. I'm like, wow, that is perfect. I don't remember what
Wanting hope. It had never occurred to me to look up the meaning of those names, and that's really interesting because they're they are such unique names. They are the kinds of names that I would normally look up, but they're so perfect for the characters that
Yeah,
I almost don't even need to know what they mean. That's
I
really
kind of want
interesting.
to see what Zuko and Zula mean now because I know
Oh,
Zula in the
I'm on
show
it.
gets her name from was it like the evil grandfather, right?
Yeah. Is that where she got her name? I don't know if
Yeah,
I knew that.
they mentioned it. We watched the show again recently, and they talked about it in the show.
Just grab him, please. Just grab him, please. Grab him and take him. Grab him and take him. Thank you. Children running into the room. Close the door all the way, please.
Yeah, I'm actually staying
So,
at a hotel with my kids, and I'm like, Mom, keep the kids away for like the next 2 hours. Take them to the pool.
yeah, my folks are visiting, which I thought would be perfect. Like, they'll keep the kids distracted, but apparently they're just letting them do whatever they want.
That's
um,
grandparents. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, Aang, the hero of American animated series. Obviously, that's what that name is most famous for. When his name is shown in written form, it is composed of the Chinese characters, this one, and meaning peace, quiet, and ang meaning raise and lift. That's interesting. Peace, quiet, raise, lift. Um, the airbender side of that makes a lot of sense with like lifting
Yep.
it up, being peaceful, being quiet. Um, what was it? Zuko, we wanted to know? Zuko.
Yeah, Zuko. Or Azula.
So, fictional name apparently meant to be from Chinese origin. Su meaning to regain consciousness, and Zu meaning ancestor, forefather. So, the two things that make up his whole character, number one, his father and
Legacy.
ancestry, his legacy, and number two, finding who he really is, gaining his consciousness. So, that's really interesting there, too. Let me see here. Combined with KE meaning sort or class. His class is also very important to his character. And Ku meaning bandit or robber, which is interesting because he does have the blue spirit personality
Yeah.
that he uses as a bandit. So very interesting how the names just mean all those different parts of his character right there. Azula, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it means blue. Her fire is blue. Azul is Spanish for blue.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
let's
yeah.
see. Yep,
Fire her, yeah.
meaning blue. So that, and by the end of that show, she's blue. Like
Which is funny because like
she's very
blue,
sad.
because
She's
she's
very
like the
sad.
epitome of the fire kingdom, and which is the symbols are red. But if you burn fire hot enough, it turns blue. But it's still at the same time. It's kind of funny because it's the opposite of water, and she's defeated by blue by water. You know.
Interesting. That's a good point. I was watching a video recently about Azula's character and um, and why her fire is blue. And yes, it is true that fire that burns hotter goes blue, but it's more than that. It's not only that it's hotter, but it's a very precise temperature, and it's very difficult to maintain such a precise temperature. And so what it actually does is it speaks to Azula's proficiency as a firebender, that her firebending is not just powerful, but it's precise. It's very pure. It's
She's
very,
a
just
perfectionist,
perfectionist. Exactly. It's
and
this very perfect flame that even her own father can't replicate.
or maybe it's not important enough for her father to replicate. But she's like showing off,
But
because
to
it's like
her, it's important because she's a perfectionist.
yeah,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
it's always visible when her brother is watching, or her father is watching, or anyone is watching, and so she's always on display. Like, look at me. She's a bit of a show off. And that drives
Absolutely.
Zuko like crazy.
Aphrodite asks if we hide meanings in characters or places that you named. I'll answer that very quickly first. Yes, every character, every main character, and even side character in my story, the name means something. It's sometimes hidden a couple layers deep. Like that website, for example. Sometimes you'll find a name and the description of it doesn't give you a meaning. It says this is a new version of this old name. So then you click on that name and it takes you to that name. And that one has a description saying, it means this and this, but it's actually derived from this original version. And then you click on that name and that gives you a whole other meaning. And so sometimes I'm using the first name, but the meaning is associated like 3 or 4 layers deep in the history of the name. So yes, sometimes there are hidden meanings in my character names. Um, and it's not necessarily something I want people looking for. It's just there because it matters to me and it matters to the character. Um, I feel like even in real life, names and their meanings are important. They hold power. When I started researching my own name and what it means, and and crafting my children's name, I tried to, like my characters, find names that have meanings that I can put together into almost a powerful phrase, uh, to sort of give power and importance to not only the name but the person carrying it. You know what I mean? So, like for example, both of my children, their middle names are after angels. My son Charles, his middle name is Gabriel, after the angel Gabriel, and my son Felix, his middle name is Miguel, which is after the Archangel Michael, and just to like infuse them with power. You know what I mean? Because the name brings power. And even though they don't go by Gabriel or Miguel, they don't share their middle name with people, it's still there and it still holds power. How about you? Hiding meanings in your character names?
Sometimes. I think the second half about places, I think I'm probably more likely to do. I will pick something that's like a name of a planet or a city or um, an organization, you know. Uh, so, okay, like for example, in my book um, about the one about the alien in the zoo, it takes place in San Diego, but I renamed the zoo. I call it the Fogel Zoo. And the reason I did that is because the zoo that is by my house is called the Hogel Zoo, and I didn't want to go with Hogel because that's already taken. So I just, but nobody would ever figure that out. But to me, it's because in my
They might.
mind, I modeled the zoo after this real zoo, and no one's ever going to know that that's what it's based off of because, well, unless I watch this program, but by reading the book,
Yeah.
they'd
At
be like,
least
"Oh,
two
it's just made up
people
name."
right now will know.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
tend to have a bigger replay audience, so folks will
right,
eventually
right,
figure it out. Um, Aphrodite Lee says that she named the four domiciles that the students live in her story with names that mean earth, air, fire, and water, even though the novel has nothing to do with the elements in any way, but it's just her
wow.
being cheeky. And and it mattered to her to include those elements. So, like we said, you know, it matters to the writer, it matters to the characters. That's what's important. Or it matters to the place, you know, whatever the case may be, whatever you're naming. Um, yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. So, how the other part of naming characters is where in the process does it happen? Do you start with a name and craft a character around it? Do you start with a character and find the name for it? Do you write an entire story with a nameless character and then figure out later what to name it? How
Well,
at what point in the at what point in it does it become a named character for you?
I think there's no wrong or right way to do it, but for me, I always come up with a name first, very first thing, because I think the way my brain works is I just can't proceed unless I've got a name for this character. Sometimes, I might change it, but for the most part, I get that name, I stick with it. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I hmm, it tends to fluctuate with me, you know, like sometimes a name will stick out to me. I heard it somewhere, saw it somewhere, and it'll stick out to me, and a whole character will form around that name in my head. Other times, you know, I create a whole character profile not knowing what this, you know, character's name is going to be, and I have to find it later on. um, but I have had a couple instances. One character in my book, I landed on calling him Lear, Llyr. Um, but his character went through several names before I fell to that one and fell in love with it and thought like, oh, that's perfect for him. Like before that, he had been through quite a few names, and it kept changing because it just wasn't right, you know. And I was in the middle of writing the novel by then, you know. Like at a certain point, it crystallized for me, and I was able to, you know, settle on one. But yeah, sometimes it just takes a while, man. It takes a while. Biblical middle names, right on, right on. Same, same.
So,
So
like
yeah, man.
in my short story, the one in this book,
Mhm.
it's about a it's about a sparkly vampiric pony. Actually, so I wrote it for a contest that I won, but like a long time ago. But the pony's name is Padua, which is not normally a name. It's the name of a city, but it's Shakespearean, and I don't know. I guess maybe the dad is well read, but that wouldn't make sense because the story probably takes place before Shakespeare lived, so it doesn't really matter. So it's kind of just for me, I guess. And then the
Yeah.
main character, she's a young girl. Her name is Cordelia, which is, you remind me because Lear, King Lear, she's a character for King Lear. She's the good daughter, right? The hero
Mm.
daughter who gets banished and comes back. And so I think the reason, and this isn't a really that special of a name, but the reason I like that name for this character is because she's a strong female protagonist, and so is Cordelia in King Lear, and so I kind of just draw that. Even though they're like German characters, I'm like, screw it, who cares? Yeah. And then the vampires in that story, his name is, what is his name? It's, oh my gosh, how can I forget my vampire character name? It's, hold on, oh no, what have I done? It's Touchstone. I just remembered it's Touchstone, which is like an unusual kind of weird name, but I wanted
Touchstone.
I'm like, if it's a vampire, it should have a weird name, not like a normal human name. Not like Louis from Interview with a Vampire, which I think is kind of silly, but
it's French.
Yeah,
he was French, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, it is. It's just like, that sounds like a funny vampire name. Actually,
yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm actually reading Interview with a Vampire right now, and I mean, they mostly just call him the Vampire, which I think is silly because there's like a million vampires, so it should be an Interview with a Vampire, but whatever. But what I really
think it's because the interviewer only has one vampire in the room with him, so the vampire.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think it's grammatically incorrect, but that's my professional editorial opinion. But like Lestat, I think is a really good name for the main villain. Yes. I haven't finished the book yet, but Lestat. Now that I looked that one up, and it's, it's a good name when you Google it and the book comes right up, because I don't think it's a common name. Like, from what I can understand is that it's a French word that means like high class or something, status, I think, which I'm like, ooh, that is perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now, and it says that, and like you say, the first thing that comes up is the explanation that it was used in Vampire Chronicle series of novels, so, Interview with the Vampire. But here we go. Rice possibly intended the name to appear derived from Old French. Lestat, state status. So speaks to his status in society and in the vampire world, I think.
Well, that's his main motivation, is he wants to get money so he can be all fancy. The vampire explains, Louis explains that he can't really enjoy it, but he doesn't really want other people to enjoy it, and so he's doing his best to have fancy stuff.
Yeah. Hey, something I wanted to show you guys real quick on this website. Excuse me. Folks can tag the names with what they think the name sounds like to them, So like some people think that Lestat, for example, sounds classic, sounds mature, sounds formal, upper class, urban, devious, strong, refined, strange, complex, and serious. So these are the ideas and feelings that people are getting just from the name being the name. And that is another very useful tool of this website. You know what I mean? Like how do people feel about this name? That's really important to me. So that's another cool thing to look for on this website. More popular names are going to have that than the less ones, but when that is on there, it's essential. I think it's really interesting.
I think Lestat, it's sort of bordering like buffoonery and just like fancy, right? You're like, oh, right. I'm Lestat. Oh,
A little bit, yeah.
It definitely sounds like either like seriously fancy or like almost mock, arrogant fancy,
Yeah.
And I think that works so well with the character.
I wanted to add behindthename.com into the scroll down there. If you guys wanted to use the website, it's on there. Wow, I love this site. Kind of see what it says. Folks feel about my chosen character names. Yeah, man, go for it. Go for it. I'm glad I could.
I don't know.
I do, because I mean, it's not necessarily what they feel about your like characters' names, but those names in general. You know what I mean? Because that's another aspect of naming a character. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the name going to make people feel? That's going to influence how they picture your character. You might have a very noble character that has a name that sounds a little sinister, and people are kind of, put off by it. And maybe that's not the feeling that you want them to feel when they read your character's name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's kind of an ironic element to it too, like we were talking about with Hazard. But like Lucifer is light of the morning, and he's this evil dude, right?
Yeah, the angel of light, right? Like, you know, the fallen angel has a name that speaks to his light and his beauty. It's really interesting. Yeah. And he's described as such as well. You know what I mean? Lucifer in general is usually described as the most beautiful of all the angels. Like, you know, to look upon him is you know, something inspiring of awe, and that's that says a lot, you know, when the idea of the devil or Satan or Lucifer comes to you in a form that's attractive and appealing, you know, like that's something to consider with, like, let's say, serial killer characters. You know, you have a serial killer who, in, let's say, is a Ted Bundy type, who is very charming, handsome, you know, like easily kind of disarms you with his charm. You know what I mean? Like that's something to think about when naming a character like that. Let's see. So right now, I don't know how many people are in the chat. I have a little bit of lag on my eye counter here, but I want to give away a 7-day free trial of masterclass.com. I'm a member on there. I love it. It's essential for me as a writer. The Neil Gaiman class alone is worth the price of admission. You can do the whole Neil Gaiman class in that one 7-day free trial. You might be able to knock out a couple others as well. So if anyone in the chat, Aphrodite Lee, if it's only you in there right now, you might be the winner by default. But evil always comes in pretty packages. Yeah, when they're really like ghastly looking, it kind of like defeats the purpose, because you know, you see them coming a mile away. So I wanted to give a little challenge for the chat so I can give this away. Again, we might only have Aphrodite in there, so she might win by default. But I was thinking of you and I creating some aspects of a character. You know, maybe creating a character very quickly here together, and then leaving it up to the chat to name that character. And the name that we go with, you know, can win the membership. What do you think? Did I lose you? You still there? I may have lost him.
Uh-oh.
You there? Okay, I think we lost him. All right, so let's go ahead and create a little character here real quick. First, let's throw out a genre. What's our genre? Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy?
Let's
Are we
go with
doing
sci-fi.
Sci-fi? Okay.
Yeah, we're both
So a
sci-fi.
science fiction story. Are we naming the hero or the villain?
Let's go with the hero.
All right, we're naming the hero in a sci-fi story. Does this take place in the future or the present?
Let's go with the future.
All right, so we have future, time, science fiction setting, hero character. What kind of characteristics are we looking for in our hero? Is he like a swashbuckling kind of Firefly type of character? Is he more of the you know, maybe a cop kind of character, like in Minority Report? What kind of hero are we looking for here? What's his swag?
What if he is the cog in the machine type character that kind of has to get pulled out of that? Kind of like, I can think of a few examples, like Neo, or you've got Brazil. You ever see Brazil? Or, you know what I'm talking about? Those kind of everyday men that are like, oh no, now I have to be...
that rise up to some hero status. Okay, what are Aphrodite asks, what's his power? What's his ability? What's his specialness? Let's see. He's an everyman that's going to rise up. We want him to develop a power. We don't want it to be too overpowering. We want it to give him an edge, but not make him invincible. I always like a little telekinesis. sci-fi heroes. There's a lot that you can do with it, and you can get really creative with how to use it. What do you think? Telekinesis, move stuff with your mind.
There should be like a twist though. What if it's like
Okay,
telekinesis but only with children or something?
only with children. No, I can only fling children across the room with my mind.
Oh,
Um,
telekinesis. Sorry, I was thinking
oh, you were thinking telepathy.
Yeah, sorry, I was mixing up. Yeah,
No problem.
telekinesis.
But I still like that train of thought of giving it a condition.
Okay.
If maybe he needs a particular instrument to be able to wield this power, maybe he can only do it during a certain time. Like maybe it's a full moon kind of thing, like a werewolf, or like what are
Maybe he has to keep his
what's the
eyes closed.
limitation?
Yeah, maybe
Sorry,
he has to. Maybe his eyes have to be closed or something.
his eyes have to be closed. That's interesting. Okay, so he can only do it with he can only move things with his mind if his eyes are closed. Hmm. Okay. Okay. So, all right. So we're all right. That's.
I don't
I
know.
don't know why that's so funny to me. Let's roll with it. Okay, so a sci-fi world set in the future. We're naming the hero character who can move things with his mind, but only when he is either closing his eyes or blindfolding himself. Um, let's go through some name possibilities in the chat. What do you guys have? Sig.
Well, if he's gonna have an eye issue, maybe we should use like was like ojo. That's like Spanish, right? For eye. Maybe that's a thing we can play off of.
Yeah. Ocular is something we could play with. Vision is a word we could play with. We can. Okay, Sig Riker. Okay, but what does it mean, Aphrodite? Sig Riker. Riker. Okay, Riker
Is
is
he
a pet
related to
form
that
of
guy
Richard,
from?
possibly Dutch. William Riker was a character in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Riker's Island, named after Abraham Ricken. Rycken. Let's look up that name since I'm not satisfied with that meaning. Rycken means. That actually didn't pull anything up. How interesting. Short for Sigrid. Makes more sense now. All right, and that's Scandinavian, meaning victory, mighty, distinguished, rich, interesting. Riker, Sig Riker. All right. I like the way it sounds, Aphrodite. I like the way that it sounds. I just don't know if it's right for this character. What do you think, Sig Riker?
It is kind of a cool name, but
It's a cool name. It stands out. It's and I
okay. What
see what
about
she did there. She separated that to make it this. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing.
okay? So I'm looking at a list of like name meanings for sight or seer or vision or whatever, and there's one that kind of stuck out that I thought was cool for a boy name. That is Aloka, which is Hindi. So it's Aloka. Aloka.
All right, closest a look. Symbolize pure and immense power. Means light in Hindi. Light in Sanskrit, light in Hindi, and pure and immense power is what it symbolizes. Interesting.
That sounds like the character, right? Do you think?
I kind of like that. But I have it. That's with the root word Alok. That's the name that I got that meaning from. Alok. Alok. Here, let's share this so I can show
That would
people
be a
what I'm
good
looking
name to
at.
put in like
That almost sounds like a
Avatar.
good surname, doesn't it? It sounds like a good
Yeah.
surname for him. I feel like that's a good surname. What do you guys
Yeah.
think in the chat? Looking for an everyman who had power he hasn't yet aware. Oh, okay, is not yet aware of, and so that's where her name came from, Sig Riker.
Oh.
So then the name alludes to
How about
the
what if we
possibility
go with
of his
Sig?
power.
How about Sig as the first part, and then as the first name, and then
Sig Alak. Let's see. So then, if we go back to Sig, Scandinavian, so mighty and distinguished with ALOK, mighty and distinguished, pure and immense power. That's literally what his name together would mean. Here, let me throw it up here. Distinguished, immense power is essentially the name meaning behind Sig Alak. Al-Lak. See, Locke makes me think of Lost.
yeah, they almost like own it now.
Which is funny because John Locke is named after an actual philosopher.
Right. Yeah.
Surname Locke, which is Dutch. Habitational name from many various places called Lok. So that's interesting. The name Locke was named after a location.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Van Locke. And then Al, which is of course short for Alfred, among others, right? Alfred. What do we got?
Could be short for Alabama.
True. Alfred means elf council.
Oh, interesting.
What?
That's a cool
Alfred the Great was a 9th century king of Wessex who fought unceasingly against the Danes living in northeast England. Also a scholar. That's interesting. It means elf council. How odd that Alfred means elf council. But I see where it comes from. The ALF, ELF correlation there. Makes sense. Alvin. Let's see. Alvin. Derived from some Old English names. All right, so let's go to one of these and see what they mean. Alfwine. Elf friend. So Alvin means elf friend when you go back to the name's roots. And that's getting into very like fantasy territory, you know, elves and magic and all that. I wouldn't have thought Alvin to be a good fantasy name, but it looks like it actually is.
Yeah, that's funny. I found a girl version that's probably could work as a male version too. It's Sysley. And it means a woman who has no sight. Sysley.
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 Yeah, it's not even finding that name. Interesting.
Oh, really? I'm looking at.
But there's close ones though. Look at this. Sycel from the Albanian, meaning open-eyed or with open eyes.
Oh, really? That's like the opposite. That's so funny.
Exactly, but that's kind of the point. Is that a character who can only use his abilities with his eyes closed is probably on a journey that's going to end with him having to open his eyes to something, right? So this might be it.
Story, he would eventually be totally blind, but then he would replace his sight with his telekinesis ability to feel where everything is. I guess kind of like Daredevil or something, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting.
To the
Taking
point where
him
he just
to
keeps his eyes closed all the time.
where like the choice is taken away from him to open his eyes. I almost wonder if it would be better for this hypothetical story that we're talking about if he wasn't blind, because that kind of puts him in a state of always being able to use his power, and having to open his eyes is his weakness, right? Like having to actually see what's going on is what makes him vulnerable. there's something to that. You know what I mean? Like you could play with that as a writer. See, Alvin, Cecil Yarborough. What?
Isn't
Where are
that
you
the
going with
actor?
this? Is it
Oh, there's like Cedric Yarborough. That's his name.
Cedric? Yes, Cecil.
He's from a
French
different.
form of Cecilia, meaning blind. Cecil meaning blind.
Oh, Cecil means blind. Interesting.
Aphrodite's doing her homework. She's coming with the big swings here. Yarborough. No meaning found for Yarborough.
Oh, I guess that makes sense that Cecil means blind because these are all variations of that Sicily with the
Exactly.
SY. Yeah, they're like
Yeah.
different nations versions of it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because there's
So,
like Cecilia, Cecil with S's.
all right. So check it out. I think she nailed it. So you got the Cecil like root name, right? Where it means blind, and then master. So blind master.
Ooh, blind master.
I think she just won.
That's pretty cool.
I think she just won. All right. Aphrodite Lee, I want you to send me an email to this email address. I'm going to put it up on the screen here, booksbyadrian.com. Sorry, not .com, at gmail.com. All right. Add banner. Boom. Aphrodite Lee, send me an email to booksbyadrian@gmail.com, and I will send you your 7-day free trial of masterclass.com.
Ooh.
Enjoy.
She's gonna be Cecil Masters when she's finished with that.
Indeed, indeed. And yo, like start with the Neil Gaiman class, but you know what? There's a bunch of really great classes on there, including one by Penn and Teller. They teach you how to do magic. There's lots of great stuff out there.
Nice. I think isn't Margaret Atwood on there?
She is. Margaret Atwood is on there as well. Yeah, and oh, what's his name? Is it Dan Harmon? Is that right? Am I saying that right? Let me see.
Oh,
What's his
really?
name?
Okay.
Hang
There's
on.
a lot
Let me go to. Let's see here. We're gonna go to masterclass.com.
Who's that coach who always yells and cusses at people? I know he's got one.
Which one? Oh, yeah.
There he is.
Yeah. His class is actually a lot of fun. I got into it. I got into that one as well.
Oh, and there's Samuel L. Jackson looks like.
Samuel L. Jackson has an acting class in there. Oh, Steve Martin has a comedy class in there,
Ooh,
which is
okay.
awesome. There's so much cool stuff in here. So you know, I'm learning card magic and Penn and Teller. James Patterson is on here.
Okay.
Aaron Sorkin is on here. He teaches a great class on screenwriting, which, in my opinion, you can apply. Any lessons you learn about screenwriting or any other mediums of
I
storytelling
think
right into writing
first
novels.
lesson is probably like make sure your characters are walking while they talk.
Probably, yeah, it's probably in there. Judd Apatow has a class in here.
Ooh, I'd like to hear from him. Yeah, that'd be good.
Martin Scorsese has a class in here.
Oh, shoot.
Yo, I mean, the list goes on and on. So
Some good
let's
ones.
see here. Okay. I watch all the writer ones from Masterclass already. They're amazing. Also, she's already been. May I gift the free trial to a fellow writer, or would you like to save it for the next stream? You earned it, Aphrodite, so I will allow you to gift it to another writer if you like. That's fine. And it's only one of 3, so I have more to use in future streams. So no problem. Cool. My brother, is there anything else that you wanted to cover on naming characters today? Anything else that we may have been remiss to cover?
Sometimes a boring name is good. Like when in my book, it's written, my novel, it's written in the style of like a realistic autobiography. So a lot of the names are very commonplace. But I don't want him to be John Smith. So I try to make them diverse, and I think we haven't really touched on that a lot. But I try to make, because there's a lot of scientist characters, I try to make sure that the scientists represent, a lot of women and a lot of different ethnicities and groups and things like that. So I think having that representation is important, and you can do that with the names you choose for a character. So if you have a scientist, there's no reason that that person can't be from China or Korea or the Middle East or Africa or South America or whatever, So, and I think
Yeah.
we as writers have, I don't know if I want to call it a duty, but we have an opportunity at least to help with representation in that way. And I think naming conventions is a good way to do that. So.
I agree, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Especially with naming my characters through that website, behindthename.com. It shows that the origins of each name, and you can even follow like the history of the name through it. And oftentimes I'll be looking for, a name that means something because I have a character that I want to contribute a particular thing to the story, and I won't necessarily have any planned nationality for that character necessarily until I find a name that works for my story, and I realize that that name has a particular kind of heritage behind it. Well, guess what? Now that's that character. You know what I mean? And now that character represents that heritage, and I agree. It's very, very, very important to, I mean, mix it up. It's not even, at the end of the day, you don't even have to justify it as something that you're doing for representation. It's just good writing to have characters of all diverse types all together in a world that you're creating, whether it's this real world or an imaginary one that you're creating. Either way, it's incredibly important. So yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I have your website on the screen. For anyone who wants to go check out your books and the books that your company are publishing. That's again, man, like it's really really cool that you were able to get so much done in the last year and a half, and really launch this new career for yourself, this new aspect of your life altogether.
I'm still going to hopefully find a full-time job with good benefits, and I'll still keep writing, but it's really nice to have this time to really focus on it. And, hey, cross your fingers, maybe you'll get laid off and have more time. But that's not, you don't have to be all or nothing, like you can do.
Yeah, agreed.
Things, and I wish I had that mindset a little bit more earlier, but with kids and family life and everything, it's hard to justify spending time on an activity that may not pay off at all. It's hard when it's such a high risk.
Yeah, for sure, man. You got mouths to feed. Keep people alive. It's quite a responsibility.
Yes, it is.
All right, guys, I'm going to share these website links again. Right now, they're scrolling on the bottom of the screen. This one is the self-publishing school with the character names and the different kinds of methods for naming the characters. I'm sharing this because in my research for naming characters, lots of different websites sharing lots of different information. This one is kind of sharing everything. You can kind of get to all of it from this one. So check it out, look through it. It has examples. It has step-by-step instructions on how to do some of these things, examples here. It goes on and on. This page just goes on forever. You can just keep scrolling and there's stuff about naming characters on it. So check it out. The infamous George Martin comes up. So that's for you guys. And also the behindthename.com is the other one that's scrolling on the bottom now too. Again, a great resource, for writers of all kinds, and even for new parents. If you're naming your children, check it out. Behindthename.com. All right, brother. So we've been here almost 2 hours. Is there anything you want to plug? A book you got coming out? Any kind of project that's coming up? Something you want to let people know about?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is you should check out my Instagram. I'm fairly active on there. It's illusions _of_grandeur_ what did I make?
There's a link in the description. Don't worry about writing it out. People just click down below.
Perfect. Yeah, and from there, you can find other things and check us out. So.
All right, cool. Aphrodite, thank you very much for joining us, and Ava before you. I'm sorry that we didn't have a bigger crowd in the chat today, but we do really good on replays here on Books by Adrian. So come back, check it out. There's going to be stuff in the comments, and you know, if anything is pointed at you, Jonathan, I'll be sure to pass it along.
Cool.
Aphrodite, don't forget to send me that email so that I can send you that that membership for you to gift away. And next week, we're going to be right back here. We're going to be talking about writing series and also rethinking sci-fi stories. So come back, check that out, and possibly win another membership to Masterclass. Guys, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here. My brother, Jonathan, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I want to have you on again because we still didn't get to cover a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about, including your 15-year project. I have one kind of like that, so you know you're in good company. Yeah,
Cool,
I want to talk about you those big projects that take us a while to get good enough to write what it requires of us. You know what I mean? Yes, Aphrodite, same time every Sunday, 4 p.m. Like clockwork, like TV. Every Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. There's definitely you know, ring the notification bell and it should let you know. But either way, 4 p.m. Eastern time every Sunday, you won't miss it. All right, you guys, thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and get us out of here, and I'll see you all next Sunday. Jonathan, stick around and we'll do a little debrief afterwards. Okay?
Sure.
All right, brother. Hang tight.